Chapter 1, Mysterious Scroll. Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. It was a winter afternoon in Three Mountain City of the Southeast Province. In the Three Mountain Plaza in the southern suburbs. Amidst the rush of people, a young man with a slightly pale face walked forward steadily. His name was Xia Ruofei. He was 23 years old that year and was a soldier who had just retired from the military camp. Xia Ruofei was not tall. He was about 1.75 meters tall, and his figure was thin. He had short, spiky hair and wore a brown Type 07 winter camouflage uniform. On his feet was a pair of standard black high-laced combat boots. However, there were no military ranks or military insignias on the old camouflage uniform. The combat boots were also badly damaged. The paint on several areas had been worn off, making them look like ugly scars. Even though Xia Ruofei's clothes were old, they were clean and gave off a refreshing feeling. But no matter what, his attire made him look out of place among the people in the city. He would even attract curious and contemptuous gazes. However, Xia Ruofei turned a blind eye to them. His back remained straight, and he walked forward with 75 centimeters per step. He was full of vigor and exuded a strong military aura. Xia Ruofei held a receipt in his hand, and his pale face was filled with worry. Huzi, this is all I can do. I even sold the house that my grandfather left behind, Xia Ruofei muttered softly to himself. With this money, at least our mother can afford dialysis. As for the kidney transplant, I really can't do anything about it. Sigh, I hope you can understand. In a few days, the two of us will meet in the underworld. I'll pay my apologies to you then. After saying that, Xia Ruofei let out a long sigh, feeling melancholic. Huzi was Xia Ruofei's best comrade and brother in the army. He was shot and sacrificed in a border battle to protect him. 2 years after Huzi's death, Xia Ruofei was diagnosed with motor neuron disease, commonly known as Lou Gehrig's disease. The symptoms in the early stages of this disease were mild, and the patient might only feel a little weak, jumpy, and tired. However, it would gradually progress to muscle atrophy and difficulty in swallowing. Under the current standards of medical treatment, motor neuron disease was considered an incurable disease. He could live for as short as a few months or as long as 2 to 3 years. Most patients would die from respiratory failure. After understanding the situation of this illness, Xia Ruofei resolutely requested to leave the army, unwilling to cause trouble for the organization. Of course, more importantly, Xia Ruofei was a prideful person deep down. He had always been the backbone of the lone wolf assault team. He did not want his comrades to see him struggle to even move his fingers and could only lie on the bed and watch as death devoured him. After Xia Ruofei retired, he went to Huzi's house to visit his old mother. However, he suddenly found out that Huzi's mother was suffering from uremia. Huzi's meager pension had long been spent, but his condition did not improve at all. Without hesitation, Xia Ruofei sold the small house left behind by his grandfather at a low price. He had gone to the bank to transfer the 400,000 yuan he had earned from selling the house, and his military discharge fee of 80,000 yuan to Huzi's mother's account. But he himself had become penniless. Now, other than the 2 months' rent that he had paid in advance, the few $100s in his pocket were Xia Ruofei's entire assets. After passing by the new Banyan Road beside the Three Mountain Plaza, the scenery in front of him suddenly changed. The prosperity of the city was left behind. All he could see were low-rise houses with all kinds of electrical wires running around and trees growing messily around. The water drains by the side of the road gave off a stench and all kinds of trash could be seen everywhere. This was a shanty town in the town. In this new era, it gave off an aged and rotten aura. Fortunately, it was said that this shanty town would be demolished in a year or 2. After Xia Ruofei sold the house, he rented the cheapest single room to stay in. Xia Ruofei's parents had died early, and his only family member, Grandpa, had also passed away. He was all alone, so it was enough for him to rent a small apartment. He quickly walked through the streets. He did not even frown at the stench that occasionally entered his nostrils. In his military career, he had experienced more than 100 times worse environments. This was nothing. Let go of me. Help. In the distance, a faint voice could be heard. He frowned slightly and walked quickly in the direction of the voice. Normally, Xiao Ruofei was not someone who liked to poke his nose into other people's business. However, the security in the shanty town was very poor. There were all sorts of people around, and the cry for help sounded like that of a young woman. There was a strong sense of panic in her voice. If he did not take actions, something terrible might happen. He walked quickly through the narrow alley. In front of an abandoned house, Xiao Ruofei saw 3 drunk hooligans surrounding a panicked girl with smiles on their faces. The girl was wearing a short white down jacket and blue jeans. She had a pair of long and slender legs, and her slightly bloated winter attire could not hide her graceful and tall figure. She had an exquisite oval face, and her big eyes, which should have been lively, were now filled with fear. Her beautiful hair was also a little messy, and her body involuntarily shivered, making her look even more pitiful. Chapter 2, Mysterious Scroll. Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. Xiao Ruofei thought to himself. Why did such a beautiful girl come here alone? Wasn't she asking for trouble? Help. Big brother, save me. The girl saw Xiao Ruofei and pleaded as if she had found a straw to clutch at. This place was remote and it was rare for people to pass by. It was also because of this that the 3 hoodlums dared to act so brazenly under the influence of alcohol. They obviously did not expect anyone to come. They looked at Xiao Ruofei standing at the entrance of the alley and were stunned. The leader, a gangster with yellow hair, sized Xiao Ruofei up and laughed eerily. Oh. You're a soldier. You're not thinking of saving the damsel in distress, are you? I'm in a good mood today, so I won't argue with you. Be sensible and get lost. Xiao Ruofei looked at the yellow-haired gangster calmly. I'll give you 3 seconds to let go of that girl. I can pretend nothing happened. The yellow-haired gangster was stunned. He exchanged glances with his 2 companions, and the 3 of them burst into laughter. The yellow-haired gangster pointed at Xiao Ruofei's nose and cursed. You ***. Have you become King Sino from being a soldier or something? How dare you talk to me like this? Time's up. Xiao Ruofei said softly. The moment he finished speaking, the yellow-haired gangster felt his vision blur. Xiao Ruofei, who was 2 meters away, appeared in front of him in a flash. Immediately after, the yellow-haired gangster felt a strong force on his chest and abdomen. He flew out involuntarily and landed on his butt in a water hole. The dirty and smelly sewage water instantly splashed all over his body. Xiao Ruofei was so fast that the 3 hooligans did not even have time to react. Xiao Ruoxin's attack was so powerful that it gave the 3 of them a shock. A hint of fear appeared in their eyes. Whereas Xiao Ruofei frowned and thought to himself. This damn illness is getting worse. When he attacked just now, he felt the weakness in his limbs worsen. His kick should have caused the yellow-haired gangster to lose his ability to move. Yet although he was covered in dirty water, he quickly stood up. On the other side, the alcohol emboldened the yellow-haired gangster, who placed his hand on his waist. The fear in his eyes disappeared when he felt the tool that would give him an upper hand. Then, he glared at Xiao Ruofei fiercely and pulled out the dagger from his waist. He licked his lips and said grimly. Brat, you are courting death. The other 2 hooligans took out their daggers at the same time and flung the girl aside. The 3 of them surrounded Xiao Ruofei. The girl covered her mouth in horror. Xiao Ruofei calmly protected the girl behind him. He gritted his teeth and rushed towards the 3 people who were surrounding him. The girl looked at Xiao Ruofei's slightly skinny figure. Her eyes were covered with a layer of mist, and his back view seemed to become taller in an instant. Xiao Ruofei landed a beautiful kick on the yellow-haired gangster's shoulder. There was a loud crack, and the yellow-haired gangster fell to the ground in pain. He started howling in pain. Xiao Ruofei did not hold back when facing the 3 daggers swung at him. After knocking out the yellow-haired gangster, Xiao Ruofei turned sideways and dodged another thug's dagger. The dagger flashed past his eyes. The situation was extremely dangerous. The girl screamed in fear. The two hooligans exchanged glances. Gritting their teeth, they brandished their daggers and charged forward again. Xiao Ruofei calmly took a step forward and took the opportunity to snatch it. His swift steps allowed him to always stand between the hooligans and the girl. Seizing the opportunity, Xiao Ruofei rushed forward and accurately grabbed a hooligan's wrist. If it was in the past, the gangster's wrist would be broken in the next second. However, at this moment, Xiao Ruofei once again felt weak in his limbs. He cursed in his heart. Gritting his teeth, he pulled hard and dodged to the side with the hoodlum. However, he was still half a beat slower. A cold light flashed past, and with a sizzling sound, the other hooligan's dagger cut through Xiao Ruofei's camouflage training suit, leaving a long wound on his arm. Fresh blood flowed out. Xiao Ruofei, who was unexpectedly injured, did not change his expression as he hit the hooligan's face with his elbow, knocking him unconscious. Then, he grabbed the other hooligan's wrist and threw him over the shoulders, causing him to fall onto the ground with a loud thud. The thug rolled his eyes and fainted. The girl was stunned. She did not expect this skinny man to be so strong. In less than 20 seconds, he had defeated all three of them barehanded. However, Xiao Ruofei frowned slightly. If not for that damn illness, this kind of untrained street ruffian would have been defeated in one move. Now, he was even injured. This was simply embarrassing the special forces. He smiled bitterly and shook his head. He looked down at his trembling hands. Was there really no other way? Keeping his emotions in check, he turned to the girl and said, "Hurry up and leave. It's not very safe here. It's best if you don't come out alone." "Thank you. I got it," the girl said gratefully. Following that, she exclaimed, "Aya. Your arm is bleeding." Xiao Ruofei looked down at the wound on his arm nonchalantly and waved his hand. "It's nothing, just a small injury." "I'll accompany you to the hospital to bandage it," the girl said. "You were injured because of me." "No need. Leave quickly. I should go back too." Xiao Ruofei shook his head. "That won't do. What if it gets infected?" The girl tugged at Xiao Ruofei's sleeve and said, "Let's go to the hospital." "I'll go with you." Xiao Ruofei gently shook off the girl's hand and said, "There's really no need. Goodbye." After saying that, Xiao Ruofei strode forward. The girl wanted to chase after him, but she had sprained her ankle in the scuffle with the three hooligans. She was limping and could not keep up with Xiao Ruofei, who was running as fast as he could. She could only shout from behind, "Hey! I still don't know your name." Xiao Ruofei did not reply. He waved his hand without looking back and quickly disappeared around the corner of the house. The girl looked at the yellow-haired man who was howling in pain and the two unconscious hoodlums. She was very scared and did not dare to stay here for long. She could only stare deeply in the direction where Xiao Ruofei had disappeared before limping away from the scene. Xiao Ruofei quickly returned to his new residence. It was a small room that was less than 10 square meters. Other than a bed and a table, there was almost no place to rest. He pulled out a box from under the bed and rummaged through it. Xiao Ruofei had just moved over and had yet to unpack his things when he went to transfer money to Hu Zi's mother. He remembered that he had placed the first aid kit in this suitcase when he moved. The wound on his arm was quite long and deep. He had to treat it in time. The box was a little messy. There were military medals that he had brought back from the army and some small items given by his comrades. There were also some old items left behind by his deceased grandfather. It was obviously difficult to find a small first aid kit at once. Xiao Ruofei did not realize that while he was rummaging, a drop of blood dripped from the wound on his arm and landed on an unassuming scroll in the box. When the blood landed on the surface of the scroll, it was like a snowflake falling into boiling water. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared without a trace. After absorbing a drop of Xia Ruofei's blood, the scroll suddenly emitted a faint golden glow, attracting Xia Ruofei's gaze. Xia Ruofei was stunned. What was going on? Chapter 3, Spiritual Map Space. Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. Xia Ruofei vaguely remembered that when his grandfather was still alive, he would often fiddle with the scroll in his hand. It looked like an old item, but that was all. After so many years, Xia Ruofei did not find anything special about it. Xia Ruofei even vaguely remembered that when this scroll was opened, it was a painting. The contents of the painting were very simple, it was just a piece of grassland with a clear spring. When he was young, Xia Ruofei had asked his grandfather about the background of this painting out of curiosity. In the end, even his grandfather did not know much about it. He only knew that it was passed down from his ancestors. Why would an inconspicuous painting suddenly emit golden light? What exactly is going on? Xia Ruofei muttered to himself as he reached out to pick up the scroll and slowly opened it with a curious expression. However, it was different from the past. The moment Xia Ruofei opened the scroll, the golden light intensified. Then, he suddenly felt a huge pulling force coming from the painting. Immediately after, he felt his vision blur, as if he had teleported. In the next moment, he realized that he had appeared in a completely unfamiliar place. This was too strange. The instinct from being in the special forces made Xia Ruofei instinctively make a defensive move. Then, he quickly scanned his surroundings, hoping to find a safe hiding spot to avoid being attacked from both sides. However, he soon discovered that the location he was in was practically unobstructed. There was no place for him to use as a bunker, he was standing on a land of black soil. This piece of land was estimated to be only 1 acre or so. Looking around, he could see the end of it. The area beyond 1 acre was covered in faint green fog. With Xia Ruofei's eyesight, he could not see anything beyond. At the center of this black land was a clear spring. The spring water gurgled out, forming a small pond about a meter in radius. Beside the pond, there was a plant that he could not identify. It was about a foot tall and had long leaves that were 2 fingers wide. The leaves were green and looked full of vitality. Of course, the most eye-catching thing was the flower growing on the plant. This flower only had 3 petals, and each petal was different in color. They were blue, yellow, and red. However, this simple flower that had 3 petals gave off a delicate and alluring feeling, as if it contained the truths of the world. Even Xia Ruofei, who was still in shock, couldn't help but stare at the flower for a few more seconds. However, he quickly regained his focus, now was not the time to be distracted. He was clearly looking for a first aid kit in the rental apartment earlier. Why did he suddenly appear in this strange place? The surroundings and the area above were all shrouded in a hazy green mist and he was unable to see through. Hence, Xia Ruofei's top priority was to find a way out and leave this place. Hence, the first thing Xia Ruofei did after regaining his senses was to walk towards the boundary of the land. This piece of black land was almost circular, with a diameter of about 28 to 29 meters. Soon, Xia Ruofei arrived at the edge. He reached out his hand tentatively and soon discovered that the mist was like an invisible barrier. A soft but tough force blocked his hand. Xia Ruofei did not believe it. He took a few steps forward and changed another position to continue testing out. The result was the same. The green fog looked extremely thin, but not only could it block one's vision, it also formed a barrier that could not be seen with the naked eye. This barrier did not have any lethality, but it was extremely tough and could not be penetrated. What should I do? Xia Ruofei could not help but mutter to himself. There is no way out. Helpless, he could only return to the small pond at the center of the land. Suddenly, Xia Ruofei widened his eyes and looked around quickly. The more he looked, the more surprised he seemed. Why is it so similar to the contents of the painting? Xia Ruofei could not help but mutter to himself. There was a circular piece of land with a clear spring in the middle. There was a nameless plant beside the pond and there was a misty green fog around it. Xiao Ruofei remembered seeing this painting when he was young. Other than the lack of green grass on the ground, it was exactly the same as the painting he had seen before. Could it be that I'm in that painting? Xiao Ruofei had a bold thought. Xiao Ruofei was also shocked by his own thoughts, but the more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. After all, the changes in environment was only after he opened the scroll. Xiao Ruofei had been in the army for many years and had received much education. At that moment, he felt as if his worldview had collapsed. He stood beside the pond in a daze for a long while. Xiao Ruofei, who had gone through the harsh training in the lone wolf assault team, had an extremely calm mind. No matter what, he would not lose his cool. However, such a strange experience still made his mind temporarily blank. After a long while, he thought of a serious problem: how should he leave this place? For an elite of the special forces to be trapped in a painting without being able to do anything, this was truly a huge joke. Xiao Ruofei smiled bitterly and muttered to himself. God. Am I going to be trapped here forever? I want to go out. Just as he finished speaking, Xiao Ruofei suddenly felt his vision blur. That familiar pulling force and dizziness struck him again. In the next moment, he realized that he had returned to the messy rental apartment. In his hand was the painting. Xiao Ruofei widened his mouth in shock. It is actually controlled by voice? That can't be. He couldn't help but cast his gaze at the painting in his hand. This painting still looked ordinary. The old scroll was covered in mottled traces, and it was obvious that it had the aura of time. Xiao Ruofei carefully observed the contents of the painting and was even more certain that he had just entered the painting. As an elite of the special forces, he would subconsciously remember many details. For example, the plant by the pond that he couldn't name, as well as the delicate and beautiful flower with only 3 petals on it. With a glance, Xiao Ruofei quickly spotted the plant in the painting. The flower on it and even the veins of the leaves were exactly the same as what he saw by the pond. There was actually a hidden secret within the painting. There was another mysterious space within it. The usually calm Xiao Ruofei could not help but become very agitated. He had found a treasure this time. Chapter 4, Reborn Bonsai. Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. In his excitement, there was something else that Xiao Ruofei could not understand. That was, this painting had been in their family for many generations. In Xiao Ruofei's memories, there was a period of time when his grandfather would open to admire it. Even when Xiao Ruofei was young, he had also mischievously opened this painting. But both his grandfather and himself had never been directly pulled into the painting space. Xiao Ruofei pondered for a while. In the end, he could only attribute it to the blood from his wound on the painting. Besides this reason, Xiao Ruofei could not find any other reason. He no longer dwelled on this issue and turned to study this mysterious painting scroll. After half a day of repeated testing, Xiao Ruofei finally figured out some basic functions of the painting space. First of all, it was very easy for him to enter and exit this space. He only needed to think about it and he could enter or leave. Furthermore, he could bring things into the space, but he had to hold on to those items. Secondly, if he went in and out of the space repeatedly, it seemed like he would become mentally exhausted. However, the pond in the space was very effective in restoring one's mental state. It was even helpful for treating physical injuries. After Xiao Ruofei drank some water from the pond, he realized that the knife wound on his arm was already showing signs of scabbing. This discovery surprised and delighted Xiao Ruofei. The rental apartment was too cramped. After selling the house, he could not bear to throw away many of his grandfather's belongings, so the room was almost full. Now that there was this magical space, Xiao Ruofei simply moved all the items into the space after making a few trips. The room instantly felt much more spacious. He drank a few mouthfuls of water from the pond to recover his energy. Then, he sat down by the pond and gazed at the clear spiritual water in deep thought. Slowly calming down, Xia Ruofei began to think about how to make use of this magical spiritual space to earn as much money as possible. Hu Zi's mother was diagnosed with uremia. The total of 500,000 that Xia Ruofei earned from selling the house and his retirement fund had been given to Hu Zi's mother. However, Hu Zi's family still owed a huge debt, and the money that Xia Ruofei gave would definitely not be enough for a kidney transplant. Hence, Xia Ruofei wanted to raise as much money as possible while he still had the energy. Xia Ruofei knew that his days were numbered. Patients with Lou Gehrig's disease only lived for 2 to 3 years at most. Xia Ruofei originally wanted to earn as much money as possible while he could still move and leave it to Hu Zi's mother. Now that he suddenly obtained the mysterious spiritual map, Xia Ruofei's mind started to run fast. Xia Ruofei immediately rejected the idea of selling it for money. That was because this spiritual map was truly too magical. It had already far surpassed the scope of normal people's imagination. Xia Ruofei knew very well that if he sold this painting rashly, not only would he not be able to get the money, it would also draw disaster. Xia Ruofei quickly made up his mind. Not only could he not sell it openly, he had to keep it as his top secret. He could not even leak it to his closest friends. Since he couldn't sell it for money, he should at least make use of this treasure to earn some money for himself. Otherwise, it would be such a waste. Xia Ruofei thought. However, as to how he could make use of the spiritual map to earn money, Xia Ruofei did not have any good ideas at the moment. After all, he knew very little about this space. The only thing he knew was that the water in the pond seemed to be beneficial for recovering one's mental strength and physical injuries. However, the pond only had a radius of 1 meter. He could not possibly drain the water and sell it. This was equivalent to having a mountain of treasure, but it could not be exchanged for real money. Xia Ruofei could not help but smile bitterly. He frowned and thought for a while. Then, he shook his head and muttered to himself. Forget it, let's go out and get some food first. The emperor doesn't lack hungry soldiers. With that, Xia Ruofei prepared to leave the space. At this moment, his gaze landed on a small flower pot. He couldn't help but stare blankly at it. Xia Rufan remembered that this flower pot was left behind by the previous tenant. For some reason, he had also brought this flower pot into the space when he was packing up the miscellaneous items. There was a small green lotus-shaped plant in the flower pot. Its leaves were plump and thick, and there were some brown vein-like patterns on it. It looked quite pretty. However, perhaps due to neglect, the plant looked listless. Xia Ruofei shook his head and reached out to pick up the flower pot, preparing to bring it out. Xia Ruofei did not have the hobby of raising potted plants. Since it did not belong to an owner, he would just find a time to throw it outside. He could not even afford to feed himself. Why would he raise a potted plant? However, on second thought, he muttered to himself. Forget it, forget it. Since I brought you in just now, it's fate. I'll leave you here. The soil in the flower pot was still filled with large amounts of small pebbles. It looked like it was completely dry without any moisture. When Xia Ruofei saw this scene, he simply carried the flower pot to the side of the pond and used his hands to fetch some water to water the plant. He waited until the soil in the flower pot was completely drenched before standing up and leaving the space. As for the potted plant, Xia Ruofei simply left it in the spiritual space. Back in his room, Xia Ruofei made a simple bowl of instant noodles for his lunch. Then, he cleaned up the room. He was so tired that he was panting slightly. He even sweated a lot. Ever since he contracted Lou Gehrig's disease, Xia Ruofei's physical strength had decreased very quickly. When he was in the military, such a small amount of exercise could not even make him sweat, let alone feel tired. He took a towel and went to the public washroom outside to take a quick shower. Then, he returned to his room and lay on the bed to rest. Unknowingly, Xia Ruofei fell into a deep sleep. When Xia Ruofei woke up again, it was already dark outside. He looked at the time on his knockoff phone and realized that it was already 6:30 p.m. This meant that he had slept for 4 to 5 hours. After waking up, Xia Ruofei's mouth was a little dry. He shook the painting that he had clutched tightly when he was sleeping. With a thought, he disappeared from the room and entered the spiritual map space. The water in the pond made Xia Ruofei hungry. When he felt thirsty, he immediately thought of getting some water to drink. He appeared in the space and walked straight to the pond. However, when he saw the flower pot by the pond, his gaze couldn't help but freeze and an expression of disbelief appeared on his face. He quickly walked over to the flower pot. Xia Ruofei realized that the plants in the flower pot were different from before. The most obvious change was its size. It had become as big as a balloon. In addition, it was no longer withered and looked like it could die at any moment. The leaves had become crystal clear as if they were carved from jade. It was magical and beautiful, fresh and elegant, as if it was a work of art with life. There was an even more obvious change, the color of the leaves. The outermost area was still very green, but the color of the inner area had changed. It had a color gradation from light to deep. The innermost area had become a beautiful purple. At the top of the leaf, there were some transparent veins. One could see the sparkling and translucent meaty leaves inside at a glance, which were as clear and transparent as ice lamps. A half-dead potted plant had become so magical and beautiful. It would not be an exaggeration to say that it had been reborn. It was Xia Ruofei's first time seeing such a beautiful potted plant. He could not help but stare in a daze. For a moment, he even forgot that he came in to find water to drink because he was thirsty. 5 Supreme Grade Ice Lantern Jade Dew. After looking at it for a long time, Xia Ruofei unwillingly moved his gaze away from the crystal-clear potted plant and looked at the clear pond with excitement. Without a doubt, the reason why the potted plant underwent such a drastic change in such a short period of time was most likely because he had watered it with water from the pond previously. Of course, he could not rule out the possibility that the spiritual map space itself had a great effect on the growth of plants. Regardless of the reason, Xia Ruofei had at least found a way to make money. After Xia Ruoxin left the spiritual map space, the first thing he did was to search for information about the potted plant online. Although the rental house was dilapidated and narrow, the facilities were still complete. This place was mainly rented to city workers or young people who had just graduated from university. Therefore, every room had a network access point. The desktop computer he had bought before joining the army had now become useful. After waiting for 2 to 3 minutes, the old desktop was finally turned on. Xia Ruofei opened the browser and entered the search engine to search for information. He searched for a long time but didn't find much useful information. However, he did find out that the lotus-shaped plant's name was Jade Dew and belonged to the 12th volume of the encyclopedia. It was also one of the more popular cactus-type plant. There were many types of jade dew. Xia Ruofei searched for a long time but could not find out what kind of jade dew was in the space and how much it was worth. However, Xia Ruofei was certain that before the transformation of the jade dew, it was an extremely ordinary breed. The previous tenant was also not taking care of it and it was basically in a half-dead state. Furthermore, it was left behind in a room when they moved, so it was definitely not worth much. As for the mutated jade dew, Xia Ruofei could not find out anything about it. Therefore, he simply entered the space again and took a few photos of the jade dew with his phone. Then, he returned to his room and uploaded the photos to the online forum for cactus plants. After uploading it, Xia Ruofei did not bother about it anymore. He turned off the computer, showered, and went to sleep. The next morning, after Xia Ruofei washed up, he did not even have time for breakfast. He took out the spiritual map that he kept close to himself and entered the spiritual map space. The moment he entered, Xia Ruofei realized that the pot of jade dew had grown a lot bigger. The leaves were even more tender, and had changed from a tender green to a purple color. The layers within the leaves were even more distinct. The spots on the top of the leaves were almost completely transparent. The meaty leaves inside were crystal clear, making one feel like pinching them. This space was really magical. A pot of ordinary jade dew that was about to dry up had only been watered with some water, and then put in the space for a night, And it had actually undergone a complete transformation. Xia Ruofei was very excited. He remembered the post the previous day, so he left the space and sat in front of the computer. Xia Ruofei had just logged into his account on the forum when he received a series of notifications, which made him shocked. On closer look, there were almost 200 private messages. It was a new account that was registered the previous night for the post. Why did so many people send him private messages overnight? Xia Ruofei mumbled to himself as she opened the private messages. Brother, where did you get this supreme-grade jade dew? It's so beautiful. This is the best ice lantern jade dew. Oh my god. Are you sure you didn't Photoshop this picture? How can there be such a clear jade dew? The comments were all about the photos that Xia Ruofei uploaded the day before. Xia Ruofei was not surprised because his account had only made 2 posts. The contents of the 2 posts were the same. Please tell me what kind of jade dew this is. Is it worth a lot of money? Then, he attached a photo. One of them was posted on the Succulent Plant Forum while the other was posted on the Jade Dew Forum. Some comments were even more direct. I want this supreme-grade ice lantern. Name any price. Phone number, 136XXXXXXXX. Even through the computer screen, he could feel that the person was rich. Initially, Xia Ruofei only thought that the pot of jade dew looked much better after watering with the water from the pond the day before. As he did not have a deep understanding of the succulent plants, he did not know that his posts had already caused an uproar on both forums. Xia Ruofei did not know what ice lantern jade dew was, but it looked like it was worth a lot of money. He opened his post with anticipation. Compared to the private messages, the post was even more lively. The 2 posts had dozens of pages of replies overnight. There were at least 1,000 or 2,000 replies. It was as if the entire forum site had exploded. Not only were there many comments in Xia Ruofei's post, but there were also quite a number of new posts discussing the jade dew that Xia Ruofei had posted. Whether it was a reply or a new post, the views were roughly divided into 2 factions, positive and negative. One side naturally bowed down to Xia Ruofei. They were full of admiration for Xia Ruofei for being able to nurture such supreme-grade ice lantern jade dew. There were even people who clamored to acknowledge Xia Ruofei as their master. The other group was skeptical. Some people suspected that the pot of jade dew was not ice lantern. The reason was simple, they had never seen an ice lantern that had color gradation from green to purple. Many people said that it was fake and had been applied with coloring. Furthermore, this pot of jade dew was crystal clear and looked like real jade. Some people even swore that it was definitely photoshopped by him. A veteran who owned multiple succulent plants said that he had been exposed to many types of plants for more than 10 years, and had never seen such a perfect ice lantern jade dew. This also indirectly proved that the picture had been photoshopped. The supporters refuted these views one by one. They analyzed the photo from different angles and insisted that it was definitely an ice lantern. Furthermore, it was an extremely rare variant. It was extremely beautiful and was definitely the best among ice lanterns and jade dews. There were also many succulent plant owners who worked in the graphic design industry and analyzed from a technical point of view. They claimed that the photos were all original and had not even been edited. They were just raw images. In short, the 2 forums were in a heated argument because of Xia Ruofei's post. Xia Ruofei flipped through the posts and private messages and could not help but grin. Xia Ruofei did not know any of the professional terms of aside sprouts, brocade, tree type. However, he was certain that the jade dew would be very valuable. What Xia Ruofei lacked the most now was money. A private message caught Xia Ruofei's attention. Brother, I am very interested in this ice lantern of yours. I wonder if you are willing to sell it. If you are, please consider me first. I will definitely give you a satisfactory price. I specialize in planting and selling succulent plants in 3 Mountain City. I have my own workshop and shed. If you are worried, I can personally go to the city you are in. My phone number is 159XXXXXXXX. Hope to hear from you. It could be seen that this person's tone was rather sincere, and he happened to be in Three Mountain City. Having a transaction in the same city could reduce a lot of trouble for him. Xia Ruofei pondered for a while, took out his phone, and dialed the number left in the private message. The moment the call connected, a young voice came through the receiver. Hello? Xia Ruofei asked directly. Are you Cold-Stirred Succulent from the Jade Du Forum site? The voice on the other end of the line immediately became more enthusiastic. That's right. Do you want to buy succulent plants? We have a wide variety of them. There's the myriad elephant, lifestone flower, jade fan. Basically, I have all the succulent plants that are popular nowadays, and their quality is definitely top-notch. It seemed that this cold-stirred succulent was a cultivator of succulent plants. The place he owned was called Immortal Succulent Store. Hearing this strange name, Xia Ruofei was slightly stunned. Then, he said. I'm a blood wolf from the forum. You left me a private message last night. Blood Wolf was Xia Ruofei's username when he registered the day before. It was his code name when he served in the Lone Wolf Assault Team. Xia Ruofei had deep feelings for this code name. The person on the other end of the phone was stunned for a few seconds. Then, Xia Ruofei clearly heard the other party take in a breath of cold air. Then, his excited voice came through the phone. So you're Master Blood Wolf. Hello. Hey, wait. So you're from Three Mountain City too? Oh my, this is such a coincidence. It must be fate. It was obvious that Cold-Stirred Succulent had noticed the origin of his location based on the caller ID. He was so excited that he became incoherent in his words. Xia Ruofei smiled faintly and asked. Are you interested in my ice lantern? Of course. I've been in the industry for succulent plants for so many years, but I've never seen such a beautiful supreme-grade ice lantern. This ice lantern is perfect in both shape and its transparency. And it's a mutant variant. It's simply perfect. With that said, his tone carried a hint of anticipation as he asked. Master Blood Wolf, are you intending to sell this ice lantern? Even an idiot would be able to tell how much he wanted this exquisite ice lantern. Xia Ruofei could not help but find it funny. This cold-stirred succulent did not seem like a businessman at all. If it was a real businessman, he would definitely not openly express his love for it when he was interested in buying it, because this might cause the other party to ask for a high price. It was just a short interaction, but Xia Ruofei developed a good impression of this straightforward, cold-stirred succulent. If the price is reasonable, I can sell it to you, Xia Ruofei said after a moment of silence. Chapter 6, Ling Qingxue. Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. That's great. When he heard that Xia Ruofei was willing to sell it, he was very happy. He quickly said, you will definitely not lose out on the sale. Furthermore, since you are able to cultivate such a supreme-grade ice lantern, you must be an expert. No one would dare to deceive you. With that said, Cold-Stirred Succulent eagerly said. Master Blood Wolf, please give me an address. I'll be right there. How about I go over to your place? I'll come over in the afternoon. Xia Ruofei thought for a while and said, didn't you say you have a lot of succulent plants? I want to visit your greenhouse too. Xia Ruofei saw the hope of earning money from this ice lantern, so he naturally wanted to understand more about succulent plants. It was definitely not as good to look up information online as in real life. This cold-stirred succulent was obviously an easygoing person, so Xia Ruofei wanted to learn more about succulent plants from him. Therefore, he decided to go personally. The moment he heard that, Cold-Stirred Succulent was even happier and he hurriedly said. Welcome, Master Blood Wolf. I'll send you the address immediately. Not long after hanging up, Xia Ruofei received a text message on his phone. It was the address from a cold-stirred succulent. Xiao Ruofei took out the spiritual map that was hidden on his body and entered the spiritual map space with a thought. He walked over, picked up the supreme-grade ice lantern Jade Dew, and left the spiritual space in a flash. Xiao Ruofei found a large plastic bag and packed the Jade Dew. Then, he made some simple lunch at home. After he finished eating, he carried the plastic bag containing the Jade Dew and prepared to leave. Just as he reached the door, Xiao Ruofei felt his hand go soft. The plastic bag almost slipped out of his hand. He quickly reached out his other hand to grab the plastic bag. He stopped and steadied his steps. After a while, the weakness in his hand gradually disappeared. Xiao Ruofei could not help but smile bitterly. That damn Lou Gehrig's disease seemed to be getting worse. After so many years of battle experience, Xiao Ruofei was used to seeing life and death. Furthermore, he had been diagnosed with this illness for some time, so he was not too afraid of death. However, he still felt a sense of urgency in his heart. It seemed like he had to speed up the pace of earning money. He had to earn enough money for Huzi's mother to get a kidney transplant before he couldn't move. Otherwise, he would be too ashamed to face Huzi. After calming himself down, Xiao Ruofei walked out of the rental apartment with firm steps. In order to save time, he hailed a taxi and drove straight to the Immortal Succulent store in Anhua District. In the suburbs of Anhua District. At the entrance of a 10-acre plantation with the sign, Immortal Succulent Store, hanging, 2 security guards stood guard in high spirits. This was because their boss, who rarely appeared, had brought a few friends to the cultivation base that day. There was a 3-story building in the cultivation base. It was the daily office for the store. The walls on the entire 3rd floor had been removed. It was the exclusive floor for the store owner's use. It was a large office that was more than 200 square meters. There was a lounge, a reception area, a gym area, and even a professional snooker table and an indoor golf course. At this moment, there were 4 or 5 youngsters sitting around the coffee table in the reception area. One of them was about 25 or 26 years old, wearing a fitted suit. His eyebrows were very thick, and his eyes were bright. This young man was skillfully making tea for everyone. The rest of the people were also dressed exquisitely, and they seemed about the same age as the tea-brewing youth. There was also a girl in her early 20s sitting with them. This girl was very beautiful. Her exquisite face was almost flawless, and her skin was so delicate that it seemed like it could break with a blow. Especially her long legs, any man who saw her would involuntarily imagine the scene of placing her long legs on his shoulders. Such a beautiful girl naturally became the center of attention. However, this beautiful girl was a little cold. She remained indifferent towards the people around her. These people were the children of some entrepreneurs in Three Mountain City. They could be considered the typical rich second-generation heirs. The young man who brewed the tea was called Liang Qichao. His father was the owner of Jianda Corporation, a well-known property enterprise in the city. Liang Qichao was the owner of the Immortal Succulent store. He was the cold-stirred succulent that Xiao Ruofei contacted. Of course, Liang Qichao was just playing around, mainly because he liked succulent plants. The long-legged beauty's name was Ling Qingxue. Her father was Ling Xiaotian, the boss of the food industry in Three Mountain City. Her family's Ling Ji restaurant chain was very influential in the entire southeast province and had at least several hundred million assets. Of the remaining 3 youngsters, the slightly plump one was called Lu Wen. His family also worked in the food and beverage industry. His family's famous restaurant chain had the same influence as Ling Ji's restaurant chain. The other young man with smooth hair and a middle hair parting was called Lu Mingho. His family was involved in the real estate business. Being in the same industry meant that they were nemesis, so he and Liang Qichao had never been on good terms. The last person who wore gold-framed glasses was Lu Ping. He was also a rich second-generation heir. His family was in the logistics industry. Of course, these youths all had a common identity, Ling Qingshue's admirers. Thus, there was a faint sense of competition between these men. In reality, Ling Qingxue was the one who really liked the succulent plants. Liang Qichao was influenced by Ling Qingxue and slowly fell in love with the adorable succulent plants. Later on, he even opened this immortal succulent store. Lu Mingho, Lu Wen, and Lu Ping also tried to win her over with her interests. They found some precious succulent plants and gave them to Ling Qingxue, but Ling Qingxue probably didn't like them. This time, Ling Qingxue heard from Liang Qichao that he had found a pot of supreme-grade ice lanterns online, and Liang Qichao had even praised it to the skies. That was why Ling Qingxue was a little tempted and came to the store. Lu Mingho and the others also followed them, but only they knew what they were planning. Liang Qichao brought the first cup of tea to the girl and smiled while saying, "Qingxue, I didn't expect you to come here to join in the fun. My humble place is honored by your presence." The girl named Qingxue said indifferently, "I'm just a little curious about the supreme-grade ice lantern you mentioned. I hope it won't disappoint me later." Lu Mingho grinned and said, "Qingxue, I think Liang Qichao must have been deceived. You saw the picture just now. How could there be such a beautiful ice lantern? Needless to say, it must have been photoshopped." Lu Mingho and Liang Qichao were both wooing Ling Qingxue, and their families were in real estate development, so they naturally wouldn't let go of the opportunity to attack Liang Qichao. The slightly plump Lu Wen added, "I think what Mingho said makes sense. There are many scammers online now. Liang Qichao, you can't trust others too easily." Although his words sounded kind, he was actually mocking Liang Qichao for not having any real-world experience and for being deceived. Liang Qichao snorted and said, "It's not the first time I've played with succulents. How could I not tell if it's real or fake? Besides, we're doing a face-to-face transaction. If it's photoshopped, how would he dare to come? Wouldn't he be exposed once they see the goods?" Lu Mingho chuckled. "Even if it wasn't photoshopped, it could have been dyed with coloring. It looks beautiful, but it'll be revealed in a few days." The silent Lu Ping adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses and said, "No matter what, we can just appraise it together later. How can we not be able to tell if it's real or fake? Then let's see what happens next." Lu Wen laughed. The few men were engaged in a verbal sparring while the main character, Ling Qingxue, remained calm throughout. She sat on the sofa and occasionally took a sip of her tea, looking elegant and beautiful. At this moment, the phone on the desk rang. Liang Qichao got up and walked over to press the speaker button. He heard the security officer's voice on the phone. "Director Liang, there's a young man at the door. He said that he has an appointment with you to make a deal on the succulent plant." Liang Qichao immediately said, "Tell him to wait a moment, I'll be right out." Lu Mingho chuckled. "Liang Qichao, you're actually going to fetch a swindler personally? You're really getting worse as you live." Liang Qichao snorted and said, "I can't be bothered to tell you." He hurried toward the door. Lu Wen called out, "Come, come. Everyone, have some tea." He acted like he was the master. Xia Ruofei waited at the security booth for 2 minutes before he saw Liang Qichao walk out hurriedly. When Liang Qichao saw Xia Ruofei, he was stunned as well. He did not expect Master Blood Wolf to be so young. He was in a daze for a moment before asking in an uncertain tone, "You are Blood Wolf?" Xia Ruofei smiled and nodded. "You must be cold-stirred meat, right? Master Blood Wolf. It's really you." Liang Qichao immediately extended both his hands enthusiastically and said, "Nice to meet you. I didn't expect you to be so young." Xia Ruofei smiled faintly and said, "My name is Xia Ruofei. May I know your name? We should call each other by our names when we are meeting face to face. It feels weird to call you by your ID." Liang Qichao laughed and said, "My surname is Liang and my name is Liang Qichao." "Liang Qichao?" Xia Ruofei repeated subconsciously. Liang Qichao laughed and said, "I knew you would misunderstand. My Aichi means tidy not start up. I have another close friend called Kong Yu too. Our fathers are good friends, and they both worshipped the two reform pioneers, so they gave their children such names. We have to explain it every time we introduce ourselves. Xia Ruofei smiled and said. The name is pretty good. At least it's easier to remember. He could tell that Liang Qichao was an extroverted person with a straightforward personality. Xia Ruofei had a good first impression of him. Then, Xia Ruofei smiled and said. Director Liang, I brought that ice lantern. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Please come in. Liang Qichao said impatiently. Let's talk in my office. The two of them walked into the immortal succulent store. Along the way, Xia Ruofei saw the neat rows of greenhouses on both sides. From time to time, workers would come in and out. They would greet Liang Qichao respectfully when they saw him. It was obvious that the farm was not small, and it was well managed. Liang Qichao led Xia Ruofei through the greenhouse and arrived at the three-story building. He quickly led the way and soon arrived at the office on the third floor. Mr. Xia, I have a few friends who are also succulent lovers. They also want to see your supreme-grade ice lantern. Liang Qichao asked carefully, You don't mind, do you? Xia Ruofei smiled and said. Of course not. That's good, Liang Qichao was overjoyed. When they arrived at the entrance of the large office on the third floor, Liang Qichao made an inviting gesture and said. Mr. Xia, please come in. As soon as Xia Ruofei walked into the office, a few gazes landed on him. However, he was someone who had experienced all sorts of big scenes, so he was not reserved at all. He continued walking alongside Liang Qichao with his usual expression. Ling Qingshue's eyes widened when she saw Xia Ruofei. She rubbed her eyes and exclaimed in surprise. Xia Ruofei. This was the first time Liang Qichao and the other rich second-generation heirs had seen Ling Qingxue so infatuated. They were all dumbstruck. Was this still the legendary goddess of ice? Was this still the little princess of Lingji whose smile could not be bought with money? Why did she look like a little fan meeting a big star now? Am I dreaming? Chapter 7, Young Girl's Feelings. Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. Xia Ruofei was still in a daze. Lu Mingho, who was beside, had a dark look in his eyes as he asked. Qingxue, do you know this young man? Ling Qingxue ignored Lu Mingho and came to Xia Ruofei excitedly. Xia Ruofei, don't you remember me? I'm Ling Qingxue. Your middle school classmate. Middle school classmate? Not only did Liang Qichao, Lu Mingho, Lu Wen, and Lu Ping find it unbelievable, even Xia Ruofei was completely dumbfounded. After a while, he said. I think. I have some impression. You remember? Ling Qingxue said happily. That's great. I thought you really forgot about me. As she spoke, Ling Qingshue's entire body was almost touching Xia Ruofei's body. Her towering breasts were so close to Xia Ruofei's chest that Xia Ruofei took half a step back unnaturally. Liang Qichao and the rest could not help but change their view of the world once again. The cold Ling Qingxue actually had such a side to her, and just now, Xia Ruofei obviously did not remember her. He said it casually, but Ling Qingxue actually believed it. When did this little princess of Lingji, who had always been known for her intelligence and calmness, become a complete love-struck fool? Liang Qichao and the rest, including Xia Ruofei, did not know that Ling Qingxue was actually a student from the class next to Xia Ruofei's in junior high school. Xia Ruofei was considered an influential figure in junior high. He played football especially well and was considered handsome and bright. There were many girls who liked him. Ling Qingxue was one of them. Most importantly, Ling Qingxue was harassed by a group of hooligans near the school gate when she was in the second year of junior high school. It was Xia Ruofei who rushed forward and beat the hooligans away. From that moment on, Xia Ruofei's figure was deeply engraved in Ling Qingxue's heart. Of course, that incident was insignificant to Xia Ruofei. He had forgotten about it not long after. When they were in high school, Ling Xiaotian, whose business was getting bigger, arranged for Ling Qingxue to enter a high school while Xia Ruofei entered an ordinary high school. From then on, the two of them never crossed paths again. However, Ling Qingxue could not forget Xia Ruofei. The first awakening of love was the most unforgettable. Ling Qingxue even secretly went to Xia Ruofei's school to watch him play soccer. But Xia Ruofei was completely unaware of all this. Later, Ling Qingxue heard that Xia Ruofei became a soldier after graduating from high school. After that, Ling Qingxue lost all news of Xia Ruofei. In these past few years, she had quite a few suitors, especially as her father's business grew bigger and bigger, and there were more and more outstanding young men and handsome men by her side. However, not a single one of them caught her eye. It was even to the extent that she was even more annoyed by such pursuits, and her attitude became colder and colder. Ling Qingxue did not expect to be reunited with Xia Ruofei under such circumstances. In her excitement, she seemed to have become that innocent and naive middle school girl again. When she saw the Prince Charming in her dreams, her joy was overflowing. Xia Ruofei, I heard that you joined the army after graduating from high school. What happened after that? Ling Qingxue asked. I just retired not long ago, Xia Ruofei said. Xia Ruofei had no impression of this passionate beauty. The current situation was really awkward. Ling Qingxue didn't notice at all and continued to ask with interest. Oh. Life in the army must be exciting, right? It's all right. Xia Ruofei smiled awkwardly. It's just exercise, training, and learning. Then where do you work now that you're retired from the army? Ling Qingxue raised her head and asked with a pair of beautiful eyes. I just came back not long ago. I don't have a job yet, Xia Ruofei answered honestly. Lu Mingho could not help but say. It's not easy to find a job for soldiers nowadays. My dad's company hired someone who used to be the head of the army a few days ago. He chose to be a freelancer and is now the head of our company's office. Oh right, little Xia, what is your ranking in the army? Xia Ruofei smiled faintly and said. Sergeant. So he's not an officer. Then it's even harder to find a job, Lu Mingho said. He even glanced at Ling Qingxue, and his words were filled with a sense of superiority. Ling Qingxue did not even look at Lu Mingho. All her attention was on Xia Ruofei. Ling Qingxue said. Xia Ruofei, why don't you come to our Lingji's restaurant chain? We have a new branch in the bell tower area, and we are lacking a manager. Qingxue, the position of manager is so important, and little Xia doesn't have any experience in the food industry. I'm afraid it's not appropriate, Lu Wen said with a smile. None of your business. Ling Qingxue mercilessly retorted. Lu Wen looked at Xia Ruofei resentfully, pouted, and said sarcastically. Little Xia, you have to know your place. Don't try to take advantage of others. Ling Qingxue said with a cold expression. Lu Wen, don't blame me for falling out with you if you keep nagging. Who do you think you are? Who are you to interfere with our Lingji restaurant's matters? Qingxue, I'm doing this for your own good, Lu Wen explained. Xia Ruofei hurriedly said. My classmate Ling. Qingxue, I appreciate your kindness. Actually, I don't have any plans to come out to work yet. I see. Ling Qingxue was very disappointed. Then if you want to find a job, you must consider our place. The door to Ling Ji's restaurant will always be open for you. Xia Ruofei smiled bitterly. Definitely, definitely. At this moment, Liang Qichao finally had a chance to interject. He quickly said. Blood. Mr. Xia, can you show us your ice lantern jade dew? Compared to Lu Mingho and Lu Wen, Liang Qichao was much more polite to Xia Ruofei. Xia Ruofei smiled and said. Of course. Lu Mingho laughed and said. Liang Qichao, do you really believe that little Xia can cultivate a supreme-grade ice lantern? Haven't you heard? He just retired from the army. Could it be that little Xia majored in succulent plants cultivation? Lu Wen took the opportunity to quip. I think young Master Liang is going crazy trying to please others. Xia Ruofei frowned. Ever since he entered the room, Lu Mingho and Lu Wen had been targeting him. He had never met them before. Were they mad dogs? At this moment, Ling Qingxue frowned and said, Lu Mingho, Lu Wen, be more polite. Why can't Xia Ruofei nurture a supreme-grade ice lantern? Just because you can't doesn't mean others can't. Xia Ruofei was her idol when she was young and the Prince Charming in her heart. Furthermore, this time, when she reunited with Xia Ruofei, she realized that Xia Ruofei, who had been through military training, seemed to have a more manly aura. It simply fascinated her. How could she allow Lu Mingho and Lu Wen continue to mock Xia Ruofei? Lu Mingho and Lu Wen both shrugged and shut their mouths. However, their expressions were still filled with mockery. Xia Ruofei looked at Ling Qingxue thoughtfully. He could roughly guess what was going on. He smiled bitterly and decided not to stoop to the level of those two mad dogs. He opened the plastic bag and took out the pot of ice lantern jade dew. Seeing this, Lu Mingho could not help but mock. This is the first time I've seen someone put a supreme-grade ice lantern in a plastic bag. And this flower pot, it's too shabby. He was only focused on mocking, but he didn't realize that Liang Qichao, Ling Qingxue, and Lu Ping were completely attracted by the pot of ice lantern jade dew. They didn't even hear what he said. Liang Qichao's gaze was a little too focused, and he revealed an extremely fanatical expression. He immediately threw himself in front of the coffee table, squatted down, and stared fixedly at the ice lantern jade dew. It's too beautiful. It's simply the work of the creator, Liang Qichao muttered. This shape, these leaves, is too perfect. Liang Qichao didn't hide his fondness for this ice lantern jade dew at all. Although Ling Qingxue didn't say anything, her beautiful eyes also flickered with a loving light. She stared intensely at the pot of jade dew. The crystal-clear dew reflected an enchanting light under the sunlight. Ling Qingxue's beautiful face became even more alluring. Lu Mingho finally reacted. He stared at the ice lantern jade dew and muttered. How is this possible? Chapter 8, A Fool. Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. Lu Wen was also dumbfounded. After a while, he said with uncertainty. This can't be dyed, right? This ice lantern jade dew was truly too beautiful. It was so beautiful that it seemed like a fake. It was like a work of art. Liang Qichao, Lu Ping, and Ling Qingxue raised their heads in unison and said. Nonsense. Ling Qingxue snorted. Don't talk nonsense if you don't know anything. This is obviously an extremely rare mutated supreme-grade ice lantern. Lu Ping shook his head and said. Lu Wen, from my experience, there's nothing wrong with this ice lantern jade dew. It's even prettier than the pictures on the internet. Because of Ling Qingxue, these people had done some research on succulent plants. Liang Qichao even opened a succulent plant cultivation base. In fact, Lu Wen had a vague feeling that the ice lantern jade dew wasn't fake. However, he couldn't help but say those words out of indignation. He hadn't expected to incur public wrath. Xia Ruofei did not take it to heart. There was still a faint smile on his face. At that moment, Lu Mingho looked at Xia Ruofei, then at Ling Qingxue. His eyes darted around as he said. Little Xia, you're selling this ice lantern, right? How about this? I'll offer 80,000 yuan. Sell it to me. A pot of succulent plant for 80,000 yuan, you've earned a lot. You've been a soldier for so many years, but your retirement fee is probably not even that much. Liang Qichao immediately jumped up and said. Lu Mingho, what do you mean? I was the one who contacted Mr. Xia. If he is going to make a deal, he will have to do it with me. Lu Ping also said. Lu Mingho, you're a little unreasonable. How dare you give a price of 80,000 yuan? This is just the price of an ordinary supreme-grade ice lantern. The one that Mr. Xia has is a mutated variant. How about this? I'll offer 100,000 yuan. Mr. Xia, are you willing to part with it? Lu Ping seemed soft-spoken, but how could these rich second-generation heirs be simple? His words also mocked Lu Mingho, and he pretended not to hear Liang Qichao's words, still preparing to fight for the ice lantern. Lu Mingho was furious. I'll pay 120,000. 130,000. Sell it to me. Lu Wen also joined in the fun. These people wanted to buy this pot of ice lantern jade due for Ling Qingxue to win her favor, so they naturally wouldn't back down. And this supreme-grade ice lantern in fact was worth this price. You guys are too shameless. Liang Qichao shouted. Then, he looked at Xia Ruofei pitifully and said, Mr. Xia, Master Blood Wolf, you promised to sell it to me. Before Xia Ruofei could speak, Ling Qingxue spoke first. 1 million. I want this ice lantern. Who wants to fight with me? Liang Qichao and the rest were dumbfounded while Xia Ruofei did not know whether to laugh or cry. Before he came, he had roughly checked the price. Although a supreme-grade mutated ice lantern was valuable, it was definitely not worth as much as 1 million. It was not even 1/5 of a million. Ling Qingshue's bid was clearly not only because she liked the ice lantern. In reality, when Ling Qingxue saw that Xia Ruofei's outfit added up to less than 200 yuan and that he had just retired from the army, and had no job, it could be said that he was in dire straits. Hence, she thought of helping Xia Ruofei. However, smart as she was, she knew that she had to take into account a man's pride and was considering how to get the best of both worlds. Then, Xia Ruofei took out this pot of jade dew and prepared to sell it. Thus, Ling Qingxue did not even think about it and gave an exaggerated price. Lu Mingho quickly said. Qingxue, no matter how good this ice lantern jade dew is, it's not worth 1 million. I know you like this pot of jade dew. I'll buy it for you later. Lu Ping adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses and said. Qingxue. This price is too high. Ling Qingxue snorted. I like it and I'm willing. It's hard to buy my favorite thing with money. What can you do about it? This, Liang Qichao did not expect things to turn out this way. He could not help but look at Xia Ruofei pleadingly. Xia Ruofei's gaze was like a torch, and he had already seen the situation clearly. Furthermore, he more or less understood Ling Qingshue's thoughts. However, Xia Ruofei could only appreciate her good intentions. He had no impression of Ling Qingxue at all. How could he accept such a large sum of money? To put it nicely, it was called cheating her feelings. To put it bluntly, it was the act of a gigolo who was living off a woman. Xia Ruofei thought about it and said. Director Liang, since everyone is so enthusiastic, let's bid. The highest bidder wins, fair and just. However, at this point, Xia Ruofei looked at Ling Qingxue and smiled. My classmate Ling Qingxue shall not participate in the bidding. At first, Liang Qichao thought that Xia Ruofei's words were as good as not saying anything. Ling Qingxue had already offered 1 million. How was he going to bid? Besides, who would dare to bid against Ling Qingxue? Fortunately, Xia Ruofei added the sentence afterwards, and Liang Qichao's worries turned into joy. However, Ling Qingxue could not take it. She pouted and said to Xia Ruofei. Why can't I bid? It's not fair. Liang Qichao and the others couldn't help but stare blankly. They had known Ling Qingxue for so long, but this was the first time they had seen her reveal such a feminine side. They couldn't help but feel envious and jealous. Lu Mingho and Lu Wen were especially furious. Xia Ruofei looked at Ling Qingxue helplessly and said. Stop fooling around. I'm doing something serious. If you like succulent plants, I'll find you another one. Ling Qingxue immediately became happy. Then you have to keep your word. Definitely, Xia Ruofei said half-heartedly. Lu Mingho couldn't stand it anymore and quickly said. Since that's the case, let's start bidding. Little Lu will bid 130,000, right? I'll bid 150,000. Lu Mingho added another 20,000 yuan. In fact, this price was already considered very high. The rare ice lanterns on the market were only worth about 100,000. 160,000. Lu Ping gritted his teeth and added 10,000 yuan. 170,000. Liang Qichao was not to be outdone. He was the owner of this place, and he had not made a bid just now. Lu Ping shrugged and said, I quit. He had always been a calm person. Now that the price had exceeded the actual value of this ice lantern, he decisively chose to stop. The money of these rich second-generation heirs didn't come from nowhere. Their fathers were indeed billionaires. However, they didn't have any businesses on their own. Basically, they were living on their monthly allowance. If they took out a few 100,000 or 200,000 yuan at once, they would have a hard time surviving the month. Lu Wen thought about it and shook his head. Lu Mingho sneered and said, 180,000. He wasn't on good terms with Liang Qichao, and the two families were competing with each other for enterprises, so he had the intention to fight. Liang Qichao snorted and said, Then I'll pay 200,000. Lu Mingho's expression changed slightly as he said angrily, Liang Qichao, are you crazy? This ice lantern isn't worth that much money at all. Are you just bent on competing with me? Am I crazy to bid higher than you? Liang Qichao said disdainfully, Qingxue even offered 1 million just now. Lu Mingho was shocked and quickly looked at Ling Qingxue. As expected, Ling Qingshue's expression had turned a little ugly. He hurriedly explained. Qingxue, That's not what I meant. Ling Qingxue said coldly. If you want to buy it, then continue bidding. If you can't afford it, then give up. Why are you talking so much nonsense? This was intolerable. What was the most important thing in front of the woman he liked? Of course, it was the dignity of a man. Tens of thousands was nothing. Lu Mingho shouted with bloodshot eyes, as if he had been injected with chicken blood. 250,000. I bid 250,000. Liang Qichao, do you still dare to raise the bid? Xia Ruofei knew that Ling Qingxue was purposely trying to arouse Lu Mingho's competitive spirit, so that he could sell his ice lantern Jade Du for more money. He did not expect Lu Mingho to be so cooperative and foolishly increased the price by 50,000 yuan. Xia Ruofei looked at Ling Qingxue reproachfully. Ling Qingxue blinked at Xia Ruofei as if they were telepathic, revealing a mischievous look. Liang Qichao was also beginning to feel troubled. This price was at least twice the actual value. It would be unwise to raise the price further, but the issue of face was also very important. At that moment, Liang Qichao saw Xia Ruofei secretly giving him a look, so he quickly came back to his senses. He laughed and said, Lu Mingho, a gentleman doesn't take what others like. Since you like this pot of ice lantern Jade Du so much that you're willing to pay twice the price, I'll fulfill your wish. With that, Liang Qichao shrugged his shoulders, indicating that he had given up the competition. Lu Mingho also calmed down, and he couldn't help but feel a trace of regret. This amount of money could buy a lot of precious succulent plants. Then, Ling Qingxue said, Since no one is bidding anymore, Lu Mingho, pay up. I didn't bring so much cash. Lu Mingho said hesitantly. I have a payment machine here. Liang Qichao laughed. If you swipe your card here, I'll get the finance department to transfer the money to Mr. Xia's account. Lu Mingho knew that it was impossible to go back on the payment, so he could only take out his card resentfully and watch Liang Qichao transfer 250,000 yuan. Liang Qichao asked for the card number from Xia Ruofei and walked out of the office to look for the financial personnel at the store. After a while, the finance personnel transferred 250,000 yuan into Xia Ruofei's account. Thank you, Director Liang, Xia Ruofei said. You're welcome. Liang Qichao laughed heartily. It's a pity that I didn't buy this supreme-grade ice lantern this time. I hope we can still work together in the future. Of course, Xia Ruofei said with a smile. Among these rich second-generation heirs, other than Lu Wen and Lu Mingho who kept making things difficult for him, Liang Qichao and Lu Ping were still not bad. Ling Qingxue, on the other hand, looked at him with stars in her eyes. Lu Mingho looked at Xia Ruofei and Liang Qichao, who were chatting happily, and felt as if he had eaten a fly. His eyes fell on the bowl of ice lantern jade dew that he spent 250,000 to buy. His eyes suddenly lit up and he quickly brought it to Ling Qingxue. Qingxue, this supreme-grade ice lantern is for you. I hope you like it. Ling Qingxue coldly glanced at the jade dew and said. If I want it, won't I buy it myself? I appreciate your kindness, but keep it for yourself. Initially, although Ling Qingxue had a cold personality, at least she spoke appropriately. However, when she saw Lu Mingho targeting Xia Ruofei, she did not hold back. Lu Mingho was stunned. He spent half a month's pocket money to buy this thing to win the hearts of this beauty. How could it be like this? Didn't he become a fool then? Xia Ruofei laughed and said. Director Liang, since the transaction is completed, I won't disturb you any further. I'll take my leave first. I'll send you off. Liang Qichao said hurriedly. No need. You should accompany your friends. I can go out myself, Xia Ruofei said. Then, he gave Liang Qichao a look and said. I'll contact you later. Liang Qichao immediately understood and nodded. Hence, Xia Ruofei walked towards the door. Ling Qingxue suddenly spoke. Ruofei, I have to go back too. Let me send you back. With that, Ling Qingxue strode towards Xia Ruofei, leaving Liang Qichao and the rest looking at each other. Lu Mingho's expression was the ugliest. 9. Preliminary Plan. At the entrance of the Immortal Succulent store, Xia Ruofei said helplessly. My dear classmate Ling Qingxue, I still have matters to attend to, so I shan't trouble you to send me off. Ling Qingxue smiled and asked. What matters are you attending to? Of course I'm going to the bank to check the transactions. Xia Ruofei said. This is the first time I've earned so much money. How can I feel reassured if I did not check? Xia Ruofei purposely put on an unscrupulous look. Unexpectedly, Ling Qingxue did not show any disgust. Instead, her eyes lit up as she said. I happen to be going to the bank to settle some matters too. We're heading in the same direction. You should take my car. Xia Ruofei could only smile bitterly and nod. He was not a blockhead and could naturally tell Ling Qingxue's feelings. However, he had no impression of this beautiful girl at all. Moreover, he had contracted a terminal illness, so he did not want to have any more emotional entanglements. However, Ling Qingxue was so proactive that Xia Ruofei could not bear to reject her. Soon, Ling Qingxue drove the latest Porsche 911 sports car over and smiled at Xia Ruofei. Get in. The Porsche 911 sped through the streets of Three Mountain City like an orange bolt of lightning, attracting many attention along the way. In the car, Ling Qingxue kept looking for a topic to chat with Xia Ruofei about. Xia Ruofei could only reply casually to each sentence she said, making the atmosphere a little awkward. Actually, Xia Ruofei's mind was not on Ling Qingxue at all. His mind was spinning non-stop as he thought about his next step of plan. Xia Ruofei already had a basic plan in his mind, which was to cultivate the succulent plants. Succulent plants had always been popular in Japan and Korea. Perhaps it was due to their cute appearance that attracted people, or perhaps it was due to the intentional hype by the merchants, but in any case, succulent plants had inexplicably become popular in China these few years. The price of many succulent plants rose as well. Since Xia Ruofei had a killer tool like the spiritual map space in his hands, his money path to cultivating succulent plants must be very bright. Xia Ruofei had initially decided to sell the seedlings of the succulent plants. This was mainly out of safety considerations. Even though the spiritual map space was in his hands, And it was not difficult for Xiao Ruofei to cultivate the plants to their mature form. Everyone knew that the growth period of succulent plants was very long. If he sold a large number of mature and rare succulent plants, it would definitely attract the attention of people and cause unnecessary trouble. Comparatively speaking, it was much safer to sell the seedlings. There were also quite a number of businesses on the internet that do the same, but the quality of their seedlings was not always great. As for the sales model, Xiao Ruofei planned to rely on online platforms. Now that e-commerce was so advanced, people's shopping habits had already changed. Moreover, most succulent plants grew well in shade and dry environment, so long-distance transportation was not a problem. Furthermore, the quality of the products would definitely be very high. Xiao Ruofei was confident that he could create a well-known e-commerce brand. It was not impossible for him to monopolize the market of high-end succulent plants. Of course, the most important thing was that he could conceal the fact that he didn't have a piece of land or a large shed, yet he was able to cultivate many rare succulent seedlings. If he had to do transactions in real life, it would be very difficult to cover it up. Instead, if he was doing online sales, these troubles could be avoided. Looks like I'll have to research how to open a shop online when I get back. Xiao Ruofei thought to himself. Ling Qingxue, who was driving, suddenly asked. Actually, you don't remember me at all just now, right? As he thought about his own matters and dealt with Ling Qingxue, Xiao Ruofei was naturally distracted. Hence, Xiao Ruofei nodded subconsciously and said. Yeah. After he said that, Xiao Ruofei finally reacted to it and turned to look at Ling Qingxue awkwardly. You, how did you know? Ling Qingxue smiled and said. I'm not stupid, how could I not tell? After saying that, Ling Qingxue smiled sweetly again. With one hand on the steering wheel and the other reaching out to Xiao Ruofei, she said. Let's get to know each other again. My name is Ling Qingxue, and I graduated from Three Mountain City No. 2 High School. I'm now the financial manager of the Ling Ji restaurant chain. Three Mountain City No. 2 High School was both Ling Qingxue and Xiao Ruofei's alma mater. It was when Ling Qingxue was studying at No. 2 High School that the seed of love sprouted in her heart and Xiao Ruofei's figure was engraved in her mind. Xiao Ruofei reached out to shake Ling Qingxue's hand and smiled. This is the first time I've heard someone introduce herself with her high school. Ling Qingxue playfully stuck out her tongue and smiled. Isn't this to remind you of the past? After she made a small joke, Xiao Ruofei was not as awkward as before. His mind did not wander off again and he started chatting with Ling Qingxue. Even though Xiao Ruofei did not have any other intentions, her beauty was still very pleasing to the eye. It was precisely because Xiao Ruofei's thoughts were pure that he did not feel pressured by the difference in wealth and status between the two of them. He had always been very calm. Unexpectedly, this made Ling Qingxue award additional impression points to him. Soon, the car arrived at the bank. Xiao Ruofei opened the car door and got out. He turned around and said, Qingxue, thank you for sending me here. Goodbye. Oh, right, Mr. Xia. Why have you returned to look for me? Could it be that you still have some 1148? High-quality succulents like the ice lantern jade due for sale? After saying that, Xiao Ruofei prepared to walk into the bank. Ling Qingxue quickly stopped him. Ruofei, we haven't seen each other for so many years. Shall we find a place to catch up later? I really have something on today. Let's find another chance next time. Xiao Ruofei said. It was the hardest to accept a beauty's kindness. Xiao Ruofei practically ran into the bank. Ling Qingxue looked at Xiao Ruofei's retreating figure and could not help but laugh. Then, she wrinkled her nose and said. This time, God let me meet you again. Don't think of running away from me again. Ling Qingxue then stepped on the accelerator and drove the Porsche 911 away from the bank. After driving a few meters away, Ling Qingxue patted her forehead and muttered to herself. I can't believe that I forgot to ask him for his phone number. Humph. Liang Qichao definitely has it. I'll get it from him. Recalling how awkward Xia Ruofei was when she exposed his lie, Ling Qingxue could not help but burst into laughter. Her pretty face looked even more radiant. Through the glass window of the bank, Xia Ruofei saw Ling Qingxue's car drive away. He let out a long sigh of relief and walked out of the bank quickly. He just made up a lame excuse to check his accounts. He had set an automatic notification from the bank, so he had received a text message when the transaction was made earlier. An hour later, Xia Ruofei appeared at the Immortal Succulent store again. The moment he entered Liang Qichao's office, Xia Ruofei looked around subconsciously. Liang Qichao could not help but laugh. Don't worry. Ling Ji's little princess has already left. Lu Mingho and the rest also left not long after you left. Xia Ruofei heaved a sigh of relief and smiled sheepishly. Liang Qichao hesitated and said. But... Mr. Xia, Qingxue called to ask for your contact number. I didn't ask for your permission before giving her your number. I'm really sorry. I really can't reject her request. Xia Ruofei smiled and waved his hand. It's okay. Since she wants to obtain my number, even if you don't give it to her, she can still find it. It's good that you don't mind. Liang Qichao heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he asked with a hint of anticipation. Oh, right, Mr. Xia. Why have you returned to look for me? Could it be that you still have some high-quality succulents like the ice lantern jade due for sale? Chapter 10, Planting Vegetables. Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. Xia Ruofei smiled and said. There are so many types of succulents that Director Liang likes, how can it be so easy to find? But I have a friend who has connections in this area. If you give me some time, it should be no problem. Xia Ruofei was already planning to cultivate the seedlings of succulents. He would definitely not lack any succulent plants in the future. When the time came, he would pick 1 or 2 pots to cultivate into mature plants and sell them to Liang Qichao. But to Liang Qichao, these words had a different meaning. Other than cultivating themselves, there were also other ways to import succulent plants from overseas. Many of the rare succulent plants did not originate from Huaxia, but due to environmental concerns, their imports were forbidden. Hence, Liang Qichao mistakenly thought that Xia Ruofei had the means to get good stuff from overseas. Therefore, he was overjoyed when he heard that. Thank you. Thank you. I knew that when you stopped me from bidding with Lu Mingho, you must have a way to get more succulents of this grade. Mr. Xia, I'll remember this favor. Letting Lu Mingho be a fool for once is better than anything else. You're welcome, Xia Ruofei said with a faint smile. Director Liang, I came back today because I wanted to take a look at your greenhouse. Is it convenient now? Of course. Liang Qichao said readily. I have quite a lot of experience in cultivating succulent plants. When we tour the greenhouse later, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Thanks. Xia Ruofei smiled and said. Liang Qichao personally brought Xia Ruofei down the stairs and started to tour the succulent plant's cultivation base. Director Liang, this cultivation base of yours is quite big. Xia Ruoxin said with a smile as he walked around the shed. It's mainly because I like this. I invested some money to build this base. Actually, it doesn't cost much. Liang Qichao laughed casually. Xia Ruofei could tell that he was obviously a rich second-generation heir. He probably ran this store for fun. Liang Qichao continued to speak. By the way, stop calling me Director Liang. I'm just a few years older than you. If you don't mind, call me Brother Liang. I'll call you Ruofei. Xia Ruofei had a good impression of the straightforward Liang Qichao. He followed his advice and said. Sure, Brother Liang. Liang Qichao beamed. Hey. Ruofei, I don't have anything else here, but I do have a lot of succulent plants. If you see anything you like later, feel free to tell me. Take it as a gift from Brother Liang. Okay. Xia Ruofei did not stand on ceremony with Liang Qichao and nodded. As the two of them walked forward, Liang Qichao introduced to him eagerly. Ruofei, one of the big sheds here is filled with jade fans. The one next to the big shed is planted with life stone flowers. There are also some tortoiseshell peonies over there, but the quantity isn't large. This one is too hard to get. And over here, it's mainly used to cultivate jade dew, but they are all ordinary plants. They can't compare to your supreme-grade ice lantern. Xia Ruofei looked at them seriously, especially when some workers were caring for the plants. He would stop by the side to watch and ask questions about planting. Liang Qichao was a succulent plant lover, so he was naturally not annoyed by Xia Ruofei's questions. He patiently explained everything to him. Xia Ruofei kept all the information regarding planting and nurturing the succulents in mind. Brother Liang, the variety of succulent plants here is really diverse. Xia Ruofei said with a smile. Then, he raised his question. But, why are all these succulent plants so small? Can they be sold for a good price? Liang Qichao smiled bitterly and explained. Brother, succulents plants are famous for growing slowly. If my cultivation base is filled with succulents as big as your ice lantern, won't I be rich? Good quality mature plants are hard to come by. We usually use them to breed other seedlings. In fact, we mainly sell succulent plant seedlings. Xia Ruofei nodded his head secretly. Liang Qichao's answer was similar to what he had expected. It seemed like he had made the right decision to sell high-quality succulent plant seedlings. The two of them chatted as they toured the place. Xia Ruofei gained a rough understanding of the growth and reproduction of the succulent plants, and the plan he came up with on Ling Qingshue's car gradually became more concrete. The immortal succulent store was not small. In addition, Xia Ruofei would stop to ask questions from time to time. Hence, after touring the place one round, 2 hours had passed. Seeing that it was almost time for dinner, Liang Qichao enthusiastically invited Xia Ruofei for dinner, but Xia Ruofei politely declined his offer. The two of them bade farewell at the entrance of the store. As Xia Ruoxin got into the taxi, Liang Qichao reminded him outside the window. Ruofei, the next time there's succulent plants, you must consider your brother Liang first. The price is not a problem. It seemed that Liang Qichao was still a little upset that he did not manage to buy the supreme-grade ice lantern this time. Xia Ruofei smiled and nodded. He waved at Liang Qichao and the taxi drove away from the store. Xia Ruofei alighted from the car near the shanty town. Then, he found a random noodle shop by the roadside and ordered a big bowl of beef noodles. He slurped his noodles and quickly cleared his bowl. With the training during his military career, Xia Ruofei was not very particular about food. However, the noodles at the roadside stall did not taste good, especially the vegetables in the noodles. They were overcooked and hard and tasted like wax. After eating, Xia Ruofei suddenly had an idea. Since the spiritual map space was so magical, why don't he plant some vegetables inside? Even if it wasn't for the sake of earning money, it would be good to improve his meals occasionally. The vegetables grown in the spiritual map space would definitely be much better than the vegetables sold in the market. At the moment, he only wanted to use the spiritual map space to cultivate the succulent plant seedlings. The amount of land in the space was more than enough. At the thought of this, Xia Ruofei decided to take action immediately. He took a taxi to a seed company in the city and bought some common vegetable seeds. At the same time, he also bought some common farm tools. Xia Ruofei had been in charge of the team's vegetable fields when he was a new recruit, so it was not difficult for him to grow vegetables. After bringing the seeds and farming tools into the spiritual map space, Xia Ruofei dug up a small vegetable patch beside the pool. The soil in the space was very soft, and Xia Ruofei quickly finished the reclamation work. After soaking the seed in the water from the spiritual pond, Xia Ruofei returned to the outside world to rest for a while. After a few hours, he entered the space to sow. As for the rest, he basically didn't have to do anything, because he believed that after soaking the seeds in the spiritual pond water, the chances of them germinating would definitely be extremely high. Moreover, he didn't have to worry about any harmful bugs. Xia Ruofei sprinkled the seeds evenly while covering the ground with a layer of soil. After he was done, he used the spiritual pond water to water all the vegetable fields. After he was done, Xia Ruofei looked at the newly planted vegetable field with a sense of accomplishment and left the spiritual map space in satisfaction. After showering, Xia Ruofei slept for 2 hours before waking up at 10 in the evening to enter the spiritual map space again. Actually, he only wanted to drink some water from the spiritual pool because his mouth was dry after waking up. However, once he entered the space, Xia Ruofei's eyes were immediately attracted by the patch of green that came into view.